Hey there everyone, my name is Chris and I'll be your host in today's episode in the History of Cyclops, the very first X-Man. Don't ever be afraid guys, because Scott Summers will lead us to victory. Scott Summers is the eldest son to United States Air Force pilot Christopher Summers and his wife Catherine Ann. He was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska with his younger brother Alex. When he was 12 years old, his family was flying home from a vacation when all of a sudden their plane was attacked by a Shear spacecraft. The attack destroyed all but one parachute, which the parents used to save Scott and Alex. Shortly after they exited the plane, it exploded and presumably killed Scott's parents and caused the parachute to catch on fire. While folding, Scott's mutant optic blast manifested for the first time out of frantic panic, and he accidentally, but fortunately, used it to slow their fall. Though both of the boys survived, Scott suffered some serious brain damage affecting the portion of his brain that controlled his optic blast. Both the boys were hospitalized, suffering some traumatic amnesia regarding the incident. Unfortunately for them, they caught the attention of the villainous geneticist Sinister, who wanted very badly to learn more about their mutant powers. So since Scott and Alex were now officially orphans, Sinister adopted them into his orphanage called the State Home for Foundlings, and using his mutant powers and disguising himself as other people, performed dangerous experiments on Scott. The only good thing that came out of this was that Sinister discovered that ruby quartz is the only material that can contain Scott's optic blast, so he made him some cool ass sunglasses, giving the ultimate style of fashion. I'm just joking guys, Sinister is an extreme douchebag. When Scott was 15 years old, he ran away from the orphanage, and after fleeing on a train, he was found by a mutant criminal named Jack Winters, who became his foster father. The physically abusive Jack manipulated and used Scott to break into a nuclear power plant, but luckily enough, Professor Xavier was tracking him and intervened to save him. After defeating Jack Winters together, the professor offered the boy to be his very first student at the Professor Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, which we all know is a school for mutants. Scott accepted this offer right away with the hope that Professor Xavier would be able to tell him about his powers and how to control them. After receiving a specialized ruby quartz battle visor, he received the nickname Cyclops and became the very first X-Man. He soon met some other students, and together they formed the original 5 members of the first X-Men team, which consisted of Cyclops, X-Man, Angel, Beast, and Marvel Girl. Cyclops was the leader of the mutant squad and would eventually become Xavier's most prized student, chosen to carry on his legacy for all mutants around the world. Scott receives his powers from the fact that he's a mutant, aka a Homo sapiens superior. Mutants were first created by godlike entities called the Celestials. When these beings came to Earth, they performed various genetic tests and experiments on human beings. They implanted strands of dormant DNA complexes, which included the X gene, and would one day permit crazy mutations. Fast forward a million years, and now we have our modern day mutants. Cyclops' powers and abilities are as follows. Optic Blast. Cyclops possesses the mutant ability to project powerful ruby-colored beams of heatless but concussive force from his eyes, which act as extra-dimensional apertures to a different universe that is a source of pure energy. Cyclops' mind is able to generate a very strong psionic field, which envelops his whole body and protects him from his own optic blasts. The maximum force of Cyclops' blasts are unknown, but they have been known to destroy Sentinels, rip through buildings, level mountains, and blast the skin off World War Hulk, which Wolverine himself stated was very hard to penetrate. In the Age of Apocalypse timeline, his beams have even been known to cut through adamantium, which is supposedly an indestructible metal. Superhuman spatial awareness. Scott has enhanced perception of the objects around him and the angles between surfaces and objects. This talent grants him the ability to ricochet and reflect his optic blast off objects in a trajectory of his choice, and he has often used this in battle. Master Tactician and Strategist. Cyclops has spent the majority of his superhero career either as the leader of X-Men or X-Factor, and Nick Fury from S.H.I.E.L.D. has stated he has some of the best leadership skills in the business, and is capable of making quick but correct decisions in the heat of battle. Master Combatant. As the very first X-Men, Cyclops has had extensive training since his teenage days. He is an excellent athlete and martial artist, holding black belts in both Judo and Aikido, and also specializing in other forms of hand-to-hand combat. Mental Resistance. Due to a combination of awesome training from Professor Xavier and his own emotional endurance, Cyclops has developed a degree of resistance to psychic probing and manipulation. His psychic defenses are so strong that even while he was asleep, Emma Frost could not get through into his mind. As with any other members of the Mutant Squad X-Men, and pretty much just mutants in general, Cyclops doesn't use a wide variety of equipment to defeat his opponents, and mainly relies on strategy and his team efforts. The little equipment that he does possess and uses though include Ruby Quartz Visor. This is pretty much an essential piece of equipment for Cyclops in and out of battle, and he can open and close the battle visor's adjustable slit, controlling the energy he wants to emit. Although Cyclops has never gained full control of his mutant powers due to the brain injury he received, he has mastered the use of the optic visor and has become an expert marksman with his optic blast. Unfortunately though, his powers became broken after fighting the Phoenix, and now his old horizontal slit visor is incompatible, so he decided to opt for an X-shaped visor instead, which is attached to his mask. Ruby quartz sunglasses. Made of the same material as his visor, Cyclops usually wears these glasses in more casual situations. He has often been caught in battle with these glasses though, and has mastered using them during fights. X-suit, also referred to as either the X costume or the X uniform. It was made for full body protection and to actually identify that the X-Men were in fact the good guys. Cyclops sports a suit that is made out of heavy-duty Kevlar and is resistant to fire, electric shocks, force impacts, and all kinds of attacks. Mirror Master Blade. Cyclops was given this enchanted sword with a piece of Wolverine's soul in it from Wolverine himself, who told him that the sword was the only thing that could take him down, as it negates all superhuman healing factors. Cyclops has used the Mirror Master Blade once before against Wolverine's son, Daken. Even though Cyclops is the renowned leader of the X-Men squad, he still possesses weaknesses, just as pretty much any other superhero out there, and these are as follows. Lack of superhuman abilities. Although not necessarily a weakness, Scott is disadvantaged when coming up against superhuman opponents, which he constantly seems to find himself up against. These superhuman opponents are able to outrun, outstrengthen, and pretty much outreact when fighting him. Lack of control of his optic blast. Due to psychological trauma from Sinister and his parents dying, and brain damage, Cyclops is no longer able to control his optic blast. Over time, Scott's eyes have also become reliant on the ruby quartz sunglasses and visor, furthering his inability to control his mutant powers. Recharge intervals. Although the extra-dimensional energy supply of Cyclops' optic blast is literally infinite, his own stamina unfortunately is not, and after projecting energy at a continuous rate for too long, he can both physically and mentally tire himself out and requires rest to re-energize himself. Thank you everyone for watching this episode on the history of the Cyclops. Hope you guys enjoyed learning more about one of the original members of the X-Men squad from when it all started all the way back in 1963. But despite all these years passing by, Scott Summers is still a total badass and the best at what he does. Until next time guys,